try to fact check every little thing in the book so that it was correct and it wasn't, you know, it sounded real. So I tried to do that. And
but it does tell a very interesting, I mean, it's an interesting story. You know, it's a young girl growing up in Queens, New York, in a Jewish household, but a very culturally Jewish but religiously secular household, with in an Orthodox neighborhood, surrounded by lots of kids your own age who were going to Hebrew school or yeshiva while you were going to public school. And you know, the different cultures that you moved
and the culture shock coming here to Penn.
Oh, and then the culture shock of 1964 when you saw the Beatles on TV.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Penn. To me, I do talk about it in the book.
Tell them the truth. You could not deal with co-ed dorms.
I couldn't. I still don't understand the purpose of it. What is the purpose of that? When are you going to live with 12 guys that you don't know and they're using your bathroom? But this doesn't make any sense. We had girls' dorms. I mean, Hill Hall. And I used to like to, you know, put your hair in curlers, you can make coffee, and you can get a little robe and sit around with your girlfriends and your suite mates. And then all of a sudden they impose a guy walking around. That was when I moved out. It was the end of my second year. I moved into Superblock, which is, what do you call it now, Harrison House or whatever. I could not stand. I thought it was an imposition.
But you do have it in the book. You have it.
Yes.
Then you just.
It's an imposition. What are they? And besides which,
and it wasn't. And you weren't making some sort of a political statement that people will need to run out of the room and go to a safe space now for you mentioning it. You, as a young woman, just didn't like having these guys hanging around when you were.
Yeah.
Walking around in your fuzzy slippers.
Well, not only that, I also talk about the fact that what was going on with the quote-unquote women's lib and the sexual revolution was very problematic to me and to, you know, to a lot of people, a lot of women, girls our age. It was like everything you know is wrong. Everything you were told to do, you're supposed not to do, you're supposed to do now. And it was just very baffling. And I have some chapters about that in there. I just found the years here at Penn were unsettling. Wasn't a calm experience. I don't know if anybody in the class found it a calm.
68 to 72 were not calm years.
But
not at all.
Anybody remember when College Hall, there was the sit-in and the bomb, and Hill Hall, they remember there was a fire in there, they locked us in there, they pulled out the phones. I mean, there were so many crazy things going on. And everybody go to Marsh on Washington? You know what it was? It was like summer camp. They put you in lines down there. You get down to Washington, you stand here, you stand here. And there was something very summer camp about it. I don't know. And it was freezing cold. We're marching. Then anybody remember Hubert Humphrey coming to for the election, coming around? He came to campus. Then there was Mayor Lindsay would come down here because
his daughter was here, wasn't it?
His daughter was in the dorm, and at the dorm you used to have to sign a card if you were going to stay out late. You weren't allowed to stay out late. But if you're going to go for a weekend, you'd have to sign a card, put it in the box to say where you were, but nobody's supposed to know. And some people put me up to finding out where Mary Lindsay went. And I looked in the box, and she was staying with some Orthodox Jewish guy in the dorms. And she married him.
So things worked out very well.
I guess they did. But we had the matchbook rule. Anybody remember that? That your door can't be closed.
6 inches.
Yeah, no, it had to be the width of a matchbook.
Maybe yours had to be 6 inches wide because you were just, you know, always up to no good.
No, yeah, but you know, well, you know my opinion because we talk about this sometimes. If they had these rules, they wouldn't have so many problems. I don't know about this campus, but you hear about these horror stories on campuses all over the place. Well, you know, if the girls wore some clothes and they actually had some rules, you wouldn't be inviting trouble. I don't know, just call me an old fuddy-duddy.
You're an old fuddy-duddy.
There you go.
But the funny thing is, you were kind of a fuddy-duddy back then.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, this whole culture was changing, and, you know, you were stuck in the middle, you know?
Right.
So on the one hand, when it comes to feminism, you were an absolute trailblazer, you were a ceiling shatterer in your career, but you felt socially awkward as a young woman all of a sudden being thrust into a world that was unfamiliar to you. We have to go to questions.
Oh, okay, plenty of questions. Oh, please, ask some questions.
Did you go to Woodstock?
No, you know something, interesting question. I didn't go to Woodstock because I had already planned to do a course, a summer course in France, and I worked at A&S department store and I got the money for it and everything. So I went over to Grenoble, and I was very upset to miss that music and arts fair, but what were you going to do? You know, I was in France.
Who went to Woodstock from here?
There
You went?
you go.
You went? I remember you guys.
Cool.
That was a funny line.
You remember the price of the tickets?
What was it?
Well, it was
$6.
free. It was free for
No,
most
we
people.
paid. No, it was 18.
You paid? You're the one who paid? Okay, in the back.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I read your book. I really enjoyed it.
Wait a minute, Marsh?
And yes, on page 8, I have exception to make about one of the stories. On page 89.
Oh, God, I know what you're going to say. There's my dear friend, Marcia.
Yeah, you mentioned one of your maybe somewhat naive classmates, and
I remember that.
story about a comment that was made in biology class. I have a different
Okay,
story.
okay.
And I'll talk about it.
Well, you want to hear? I'll just tell the one. Okay.
No, don't tell
She wants to talk to you privately.
Oh, okay. You want to talk to me privately?
Yes, I can tell you my memory of that story.
Okay, because I put Marcia in.
Let's hear the story.
Oh, you want to hear the story?
Yeah.
Marcia doesn't want to hear the story. No, I don't
We
want.
want to hear the story.
I don't want to upset Marcia. Okay.
Go ahead. Now we've raised everyone's curiosity.
Oh, all right. Well, you know.
Just sold another 100 books for you.
No, we were saying this is relative to what we didn't know or what we knew or what we didn't know about the facts of life, et cetera, et cetera.
Freshman year.
We were sitting in, was Dr. Waldron's class? Yes. And Dr. Waldron was explaining certain things, reproductive mechanisms, and she said, this is my story, she said, she talked about involuntary sexual responses. And we both wrote it down in our notebook, and my recollection is that you were saying to me, what is that? And I was saying, don't ask, shh, don't ask, because, you know, it's going to be embarrassing. And you're going, and you asked what that was, and I went, oh my gosh, you shouldn't have asked. But I was one step, just this much ahead of you, you know, because that's about it, you know. And that was my I mean, nowadays, when you think about something like that.
Now, Marcia
What
has
are
a
you
different
talking about?
recollection.
What does Marcia say? What do you say?
I don't remember if it was Dr. Waldron, but I remember the topic came up about pelvic thrusting.
Yes.
That's a different story.
Yes. Yes. Well, actually,
I became a doctor. I had to know.
you know something. You're absolutely right. And
I could just write it down without picturing it in my mind.
you know you're absolutely right. And I remember she said that, and then I do remember that, but I didn't put it